Compliance in manufacturing is one of those mission-critical, yet painfully slow and manual processes. But what if AI could change that? Well, my guest today, Kristina, she's the Chief Innovation Officer at a company called Signify, a startup that's bringing AI-driven efficiency to regulatory compliance. And Signify is a spin-out from an incubator that's already raised $2.1 million to build an AI-powered platform that's designed to help manufacturers navigate that complex web of compliance documentation. So whether it's labelling requirements across international markets, labour regulations, or supply chain transparency, compliance missteps can cost companies time, money, and product delays. So how can AI not only streamline these workflows, but also help businesses stay ahead of constantly evolving regulations? So today we're going to explore how AI is transforming compliance in manufacturing, the challenges of user adoption, and where AI could go next in the industry, from supply chain optimization to defect detection. So, is AI finally ready to solve one of manufacturing's most stubborn bottlenecks? Let's find out now. So, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kristina Hloptsidis, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Signify. And what Chief Innovation Officer really means is I focus on both regulatory and our users and customers. And we'll dive into why regulatory is important a little bit later on. But my background is actually in regulatory and operations. And I've worked most of my career in the space sector. So I worked in aerospace and defense, and then came over and joined Signify in June of 2024. And very, very high level, Signify is an AI-powered compliance management system specifically designed for manufacturers.
Incredibly cool. And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on the podcast today is every day we take a different topic around how technology is impacting our life, our business, our work, our world, and anything in between. And I think when we mention AI now, we almost wince a little bit because it's being so overused. So I try and bring it back to, hey, what problems are we solving here? And one of the things I was reading about Signify is how you're using AI to analyze compliance documentation and reduce risk throughout its life cycle. And that is a problem inside every organization. So can you tell me a little bit more about how your technology addresses some of these unique challenges faced by manufacturers, especially in the highly regulated industries?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Signify offers really two unique value points for users, right? And AI is agreed, such a big word that we're using these days. So the first, right, is the generation of what we would call frameworks, which is essentially like a checklist of requirements from a regulation or standard that's really refined to you, your company, your product, and market, right? So as somebody who's worked in regulatory and compliance for a good chunk of my career, one of the hardest things in a heavily regulated industry is figuring out what actually applies to my product, my market, what regulations do I need to be paying attention to? And then sometimes that's thousands, if not millions of words in these, regulations that you have to go through. So that's kind of the first place where Signify injects value for our customers, right? Is giving a refined checklist for regulatory compliance, really anyone in the manufacturing cycle who has to deal with compliance to do. The second piece is we actually take documents or even like a label, think like consumer products, and we can run those documents or labels against that checklist and point out where there might be nonconformities or, issues, right, with compliance. So think like policies or, like I said, artwork or labels. We can take your real documentation for your product, and once we've figured out, okay, these are the compliance areas that matter to you, these are your frameworks, we can actually test that using AI.
And I think compliance is often seen as a repetitive and labour-intensive process, which makes it a textbook use case for AI. So how does Signify's AI-powered platform, how does it streamline these workflows and ultimately free up time for more strategic tasks, which is the big promise here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question, just because it's the root of what we do, right? And what makes me so passionate about talking to, users and customers. It takes so long to complete and create and figure out these checklists, right? Like very, very pragmatically, what does this say? What does it translate into what I have to do in my day-to-day operations? I mean, you're looking at these regulations, you shall this, but if this, you do that, right? So really, really, I love that it gives you this very clear, concise checklist to use. And then again, that verification process or that process of going through like an audit, like let's say you've got an ISO standard or an audit, you want to go against the standard, right? So much reading, right? So much back and forth, verifying, having a very simple, concise, this is what you need to focus on. These are the areas where things have changed or been modified, and you need to go look at these, is crucial. And I think streamlining those parts of the compliance process. Compliance people rarely get the fun or cool tools. I would say it's someone who's done regulatory and compliance in my career. So I think streamlining those really administratively burdensome, labor intensive workflows to give a very, very clear, this is what you need to focus on. This is where you need to go focus your efforts to them is really, how we're aiming to kind of streamline those processes for them.
And with the growing complexity of regulations ranging far and wide, from labeling requirements to labor practices and carbon emissions and ESG scores, how do you help manufacturers better adapt to some of these changing demands across multiple markets? Because I would imagine it's getting increasingly challenging and something we don't often think about because somebody else is taking care of it. But how are you helping here?
There is a lot, right? I always talk about the web of regulation or the web of requirements. And I think, one of the ways we can be helpful with kind of that growing complex web is finding similarities, right? If you're doing something here with this regulation, are you actually also compliant with, XYZ over here? Because they're different, but they're similar. But essentially, Signify system is catered to your specific product and your market. So in real time, we're able to track if a regulation or a standard that's applicable to you changes, or your product formulation changes, or something about your documentation changes, right? Signify can tell you if there was an impact to your compliance, right? So I think that really matters in the case where, maybe a regulation changes, or maybe you're distributing in multiple markets and something about your formulation changes and you're now distributing like in California and you have to have, Proposition 65 or one of those warnings on your label. So that's really where Signify is helpful. It's that real time kind of monitoring and verifying and checking to make sure you're always in alignment with that regulation.
And a question I've got to ask is because I think many existing quality management software systems, they also offer compliance capabilities, have done for many years, and yet the problems still persist. Very similar to the communication problem. We've got so many communication tools now, but we still have the same problems there. So how is Signify's approach different from traditional solutions, traditional quality management software systems that tag on those compliance capabilities?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the workflows and processes behind compliance, right? So I think, again, no matter what, there's a manual element to how most individuals and companies are handling compliance. They're often, spread among many systems or documents, and it's back and forth. It's redlining. It's looking at a document. It's all done in a very manual way. So, we're trying to help automate those parts of the compliance review processes that are traditionally done manually or very time consuming. And again, we firmly believe, right? We talk about AI and how AI is so prevalent in today and how often it comes up, right? We are very, very firmly in the camp that, AI should be used to support the human in the loop and that the human in the loop is crucial, right? So the way that we've balanced that with our system is giving the human in the loop the ability to automate those difficult parts of the process and then give them, hey, these are the things you need to focus on, right? And I obviously can't compare to other systems, but for a lot of the folks we're talking to, they're still doing this in a very manual way with a workbook, documents and policies and PDFs and things are all kind of spread throughout their internal systems, right?
Yeah, completely with you on that. And of course, AI is increasingly being applied to antiquated processes, but it also comes with some limitations. So what do you see as the biggest challenges to implementing AI in compliance workflows, and how do you overcome them at Signify? I expect that you speak to a lot of different customers around the world, and there's probably a few trends in the kind of things they're coming to you. But what are those biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective and the conversations I'm having, I think it's really getting people used to the new way of working. It's changing the way it's always been done to a new way, right? I go into these conversations with people with a lot of empathy and understanding as someone who's experienced many flavors of how to manage compliance in an organization. And especially when you're talking to people who may still have, paper copies of quality management systems and filing cabinets in their office, right? This is kind of a new technology that folks need to kind of adapt to, right? And I think, again, it's encouraging, implementation of this new technology. And then, of course, stressing the importance of this is just a different way for you to achieve what you have to do. And so it's kind of teaching about the actual real application of AI and where that can be helpful. And then, of course, helping solve problems for people, right? But I think probably, the top challenge that we run into are folks, a little bit reluctant to adopt AI or having a hard time kind of figuring out where or how to, bring a technology into their organization and their workflow.
And as you work with manufacturers, what are some of the more pragmatic ways that companies can adopt AI tools to enhance regulatory compliance processes without overhauling their entire operations? Because in my IT past, I've often seen how people try and do everything all at once, and often it makes much more sense to start slowly and then slowly increase. But what are you seeing here?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think going into it with an all or nothing mindset will not be successful. I think find a very specific use case or an example where, you can improve a workflow with AI. So start small, set a measurable goal and then keep your data, right? So in order to kind of show where there's value, whether it's time saving or you're faster to market because you were able to do this process much more quickly using AI. Keep track of that, right? And again, like compliance teams and folks that I've talked to, they're often being asked, to do more with less. And I think finding those workflows that can, help save you time and give you more time for the parts that are crucial to your business operation. That's where you need to focus. Just, dip your toe in and start small and set those measurable goals. And then you can expand from there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because I think when you start small and you set those small goals and you start to get those wins, to get those successes, that just fuels the appetite further. So completely agree with you there. And if we look beyond here, though, and dare to look into the future, how do you see AI evolving in the manufacturing sector, and what role do you see yourselves at Signify playing in helping shape that transformation as it continuously evolves?
Yeah. I mean, I see AI really, again, changing how we work in many ways, and I see it being part of how we work, right? So the same way that email or, document processing was something that we started using in our day-to-day lives, I see that's where AI is going to fit as like the next big enabler for many sectors and including manufacturing. I think with robotics and manufacturing and technology like computer vision for defect detection, right? I'm always really interested in that, given I was somebody who worked with a hardware manufacturing line in my past, right? And looking for defects. Outside of compliance, and I do see that being a consistent challenge or a place where AI can help enhance operations. I think supply chain is a huge use case, and that we'll start to see AI used in supply chain applications, right? And again, Signify is working on use cases for how we can help there. So think like supplier questionnaires or supplier requirements where you get, hundreds of pages of requirements from a supplier and you have to meet, specific standards before you can deliver to them, right? Again, that's a place where we can use AI to translate those requirements into a checklist and then, of course, verify your documentation, your product documentation against it. So I do think, supply chain, things are really going to continue to heat up there for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today around using AI to analyze compliance documentation and ultimately reduce risk throughout the life cycle. There's a lot of talk at the moment around we need to get the ROI of AI. What is that ROI? How do we create tangible benefits? And I think you've highlighted one beautifully today. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave one final gift to everyone listening. We have a Amazon wish list where I add a book that guests recommend and listeners can check out. What book would you like to add to that list today and why?
Of course. Yeah, I love this question. So as somebody working at a startup, and who has historically worked at startups, I think the book, and I just actually finished it, Don't Believe Everything You Think, by Joseph Wynn. And that's really, really helpful for me in terms of kind of translating, what's going on in your brain. It's a bit of a self-help book, but it really did help me, gain new perspectives on how I think and my thought patterns. And I did find it really helpful. So I love that book and would highly recommend it.
Fantastic. I'll get that added straight to our Amazon wishlist. And for everybody listening, just wants to find out more information about Signify, maybe dig a little bit deeper and contact you or your team, where would you like to point everyone listening? Where should they go?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find more about Signify at getsignify.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to answer questions or talk more about AI.
Awesome. Well, I'll get those links added too so people can find you nice and easy. We covered a lot in a short amount of time today about using AI to support regulatory and compliance workflows and processes throughout manufacturing. But also, I think more important than anything is providing some of those pragmatic use cases of AI tools and software and helping people get up and running and just starting slowly. I think that's the key message here. But thank you for starting this conversation today, Kristina.
Thank you so much, Neil. It was great to talk to you.
Wow. Fascinating conversation with Kristina today. And I, for one, really enjoyed diving into the real world applications of AI in compliance and manufacturing. And it became clear very quickly in our conversation that AI isn't just about automation. It's about enabling better decision making, reducing risks, and freeing up teams to focus on strategic priorities. That is so much more powerful than the phrase AI. And as Kristina highlighted, successful AI adoption isn't just about the tech. It's about getting people on board. It's about starting small, starting measurable goals, providing value over time. That way, manufacturers can integrate AI into daily workflows, much like they once did with email and ERP systems back many years ago. But looking ahead, AI's role in supply chain management, quality control, predictive analytics could reshape the way that manufacturers operate. But the big question is, are businesses ready to embrace AI for compliance? Or will legacy processes hold them back still? Love to hear your thoughts on this. Is AI cracking the compliance problem, or are we just scratching the surface? Let's keep this conversation going. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, just @NeilC.Hughes. Keep your questions, comments, and everything coming over to me. I will catch up with your messages and reply as quickly as I can. But more than anything, I'll be back again tomorrow with another episode. Speak with you all then. Bye for now.